Welcome to Adventures in Leadership, the podcast where we explore the connection between adventure and leadership. I'm your host, Bruce Hough. Life and business is full of the unusual, the exciting, the unknowns, risks, and ambiguity, all of which define adventure in this journey of ours. In each episode, we'll take a deep dive into the lessons and experiences that can be gained from adventuring beyond our comfort zones and taking on new challenges, and how we can apply those to life, leadership, and business. Join us as we hear from business leaders, experts, and yes, explorers and adventurers who have leveraged their experiences to develop the skills, the resilience, and mindset needed to be effective leaders. So grab your gear and buckle up. It's time to embark on a journey of personal growth, inspiration, courage, and discovery. Let's get started. Welcome to part 2 of my conversation with my son, Derek Hough. I know that one of the things that I have appreciated about you and your sister when you were touring together and then even independently in this area, where because you're in the public eye, right? People have ideas about who you must be. You know, they see your public persona. One of my favorite experiences was walking backstage and hearing this kind of rough old roadie, all tattooed, bearded, long hair, t-shirt, AC/DC, whatever, and he's pretty gruff, and I'm backstage and he's like, "What are you doing back here?" And I go, "Oh, I'm with the band." I'm, the kids, those are my kids. And and then all of a sudden his entire demeanor changes. Literally a tear comes to his eye and he tells me how much he appreciates what good people that you are, because you treat them like everybody else, not less than anyone in any other position. And they're just very much appreciative of the fact that your kindness knows no caste system, no stratus of elitism, nothing. Kindness is for everybody. And that's an example. And that example is a leadership trait. When you exemplify virtues and traits that should be followed, I mean, that's a huge thing. And I know that that's a natural thing for you to do, but for those of us where it's not as natural, you can become more like that person if you want. I love teaching this concept of, set a goal to smile at 3 people you don't know every day. I mean, 3 people, give them a smile and see what the reactions are. Well, first of all, it makes you feel good just to smile. That's just a physiological response to smiling. You're going to feel better if you're smiling. But it's interesting when you pick somebody you do not know and you intentionally smile at them in their presence so they are aware of that smile. It is a remarkable thing, and it changes your whole state to do that.
Well, to answer what you were saying before, somebody told me this before, and I thought it just stuck with me. And it was understand, because I'm going to be honest with you. In the early seasons of Dancing with the Stars, for instance, I wouldn't consider myself a super nice, like, honestly. And it wasn't that I wasn't mean necessarily, but what would happen was that I would get extremely fearful. I would get extremely fearful that I wasn't going to be good enough, and I didn't have enough time. And so when the producers would ask me for an interview, and I would be like, no, no, I would react in a way that it wasn't pleasant, honestly. And I look back at that, and I look back at that version of myself, and I'm like, interesting. And then what happened was I started to understand myself a little bit more, realizing that, like, oh, when I act like that towards people, I'm acting I'm acting out of fear. Like, I go back to, like, why am I, when I'm in a very confident place and I feel very confident about myself, I'm only and I feel good about myself, I'm only giving goodness to people. I'm only giving love to people, and even in difficult situations. But if I'm hurting and if I'm in a fearful position, that's when I was like, oh, that's when I like react to certain places and to certain people. So that was a big learning experience. And then sometime, within like, after a few seasons, somebody told me something that was really interesting. They said, learn other people's jobs, understand, and not just learn them like everything, but like understand what they do. Because ends up happening, what happened at the beginning was I thought that my job was the most important. I thought there's no show if I'm not dancing, and there's no da 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 da. I was just like, this young naive kid who was just terrified. And they would always say, Derek, we have to have interviews. So what I did is I made the conscious effort to learn what the lighting guy does. What is his job? What is the field producer over here? What is the camera operator? What does his job do? What is this? And how do all their jobs contribute to this whole show? And that if this person wasn't here, it wouldn't be the same show. And if this person wasn't here, it wouldn't be the same show. It's such a collaborative effort. It's a symphony, basically, that's creating this orchestra of synergy. And so for me, what that did is it taught me, one, to respect and to appreciate everybody involved. And then what ended up happening was, one, I felt better about the situation, the environment, and it became a better working environment. It became more collaborative. It became like, then in the future, there'd be certain guys who'd be like, hey, I don't really do this for anybody else, but like I love working with you, Derek, and like you're, like, let's do this, and so, and I didn't do it for that reason, but you start realizing that those relationships became really valuable over time. When I do direct or I do produce something, I call up, that camera operator, or I call up that lighting guy, and he's like, yeah, man, of course, I love working with you, and I think back, I'm like, man, if I would have stayed on the path of like my earlier self, I would have zero relationships with these people because I was so focused on myself. I'm so focused on my value and not their value. And by the way, doesn't mean that I'm perfect. That it still creeps up. Just recently, I was in a situation. We're about to go live on television. I'm doing this performance, and the music isn't right, and I'm panicking, and I speak, strongly with the musical director and in front of everybody, and I was under pressure, and by the way, instantly felt like terrible, right? Instantly. It was just in the moment, and I went over and I talked to, and I apologized to him, and I just said, like, I'm so sorry, and genuinely the fear got the better of me, and I just I always make a point that if I ever do have a moment like that arise, which is less and less and less, but if it does happen, I immediately try to own it, own that moment, and to just show my appreciation, my love for that person. So I guess the moral of the story basically is every single person has value. Every single person around you, whether it be the stagehand or the props or hair or makeup, whatever it is, there's no more important job. Everybody's job's important, and if you treat it that way, you realize that you've created a team. And I get emotional sometimes when I think about, I can call my friend. I'm like, hey, I need this thing for the drums, and I need the horns, and I'm so thankful for them, that I've been fortunate enough to create this sort of like community and this team to where if I have creative ideas, I can reach out. And it's a beautiful experience, and it's challenging sometimes, but it's a good experience. So everybody's job is valuable.
Well, not only everybody's job is valuable, but I love what you said about learning and understanding the roles of other people. I had a very interesting experience once. I was in a different industry, nutritional supplements. We manufactured thousands of products. It was a very interesting business. I remember, and we acquired a lot of businesses. It was sort of a roll up so that we could, scale this business. And we went to a company to go look at it. And I'm standing with the CEO, kind of on a catwalk overlooking their manufacturing facility. And I asked him a question. I says, "Oh, so what machine is, what are you using over here in terms of your, I think it was a, encapsulating machine. What machine are you guys using? And he looked at me as, I don't know. I don't know what it is. And I
Yeah.
thought to myself, that's interesting. I mean, even if all you did was sign the purchase orders for that machine, you'd know what it was. He literally did not understand anything that happened on the floor and of his manufacturing facility. And it was sort of a revelation to me because, my partner, who was, just a genius in business, was somebody that really taught me you have to understand kind of the detail, right? Understand when you produce a TV show, you got it, understanding the details of how that gets done. Even if you're the executive producer, you need to know those details because that's all part of what makes it successful. Now, you don't have to do those jobs, but you need to understand them well enough, right? You need to be
Yeah.
able to understand how it fits into the overall picture. So I thought that was very interesting. The other thing that you said that I thought was really key was, and you didn't actually say it, I'm going to say it for you. You get to choose how you act. It's that agency that we have that basically says, oh yeah, you know what? That wasn't my best response. That's not who I am. I shouldn't have responded that way to that person. You get to choose how you respond. That's the Viktor Frankl Man's Search for Meaning lesson.
Yeah.
Steve Covey really articulated it well when he said, the space between stimulus and response, that space is that moment where you get to choose how you think about something or what you do, how you respond. And that everybody has that. And if we just realize that we do have that space, and sometimes it's not a lot of space, but sometimes we need to take more space and give ourselves more space so that we do respond in the right way. And lastly, on that, the idea of acknowledging and recognizing and appreciating those who you work with. That is maybe one of the least followed ideas of leadership, which is, show appreciation, show gratitude, have expressions of not only acknowledgement but recognition for their contribution to the overall organization or system or TV show or whatever it happens to be, and taking that time to give that recognition. You can do private acknowledgement, which is important, but you can also do public recognition for things that ought to be also publicly recognized. And so I love the idea that I think Kouzes and Posner talked about called the encouraging heart. And to me, that's one of the key principles of your ability to lead your partners is having an encouraging heart.
Well, I think what we're saying too is it just creates a culture too. It creates an environment where it's everybody is working at their best. You know what I mean? And that's the key, right? Is to bring out the best in people. And there's I'm actually, hold on. I have this thing actually here, which I just saw. And I thought it was really interesting.
He's disappeared from the camera, but he's back. Okay,
yes. Sorry.
Well,
I'm actually gonna read something because I thought this was kind of interesting too. And this is we all have dark inside us, right? And we also have light. What you stand witness for in others is strengthening them by the power of your observation, right? So it's like, basically, if you see the best in people, it'll bring out the best in them. If you see the worst in people, it'll bring out the worst.
Yeah.
And I think that's the idea, is it's you bring out the best by the power of your observation. So I love that because, when you see certain people, you might be like, I don't know, that guy, I don't know. I don't like the way, your instinct is like your first impression perhaps is like, I don't like the way he is or the talks. But instead of sort of being judgmental, right? Because first of all, too, when you judge, you immediately separate. You immediately separate yourself from that person. So instead of being judging, be curious, right? You're like, okay, why are they like that? I wonder where that comes from. Like, and you lean into that person rather than like pull away. Lean into that person and say, like, hey, so tell me, like, what's your story, man? Like, what's your life? And then it's happened many times where all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, and then you see them soften, you see them like warm up, you see them open up, and you realize, oh, they're just having a bad day or something, right? Something happened that morning, or maybe that's just the way they are, and it's not personal or anything like that. It's just the way they are.
Yeah.
But the point being is that it's about being curious. I think that is one of the most important words, and practices, to be a leader or to be somebody that you want to encourage, is to be curious, because most things are never what they seem, and especially people. Most people, when you see them at face value, there's so much more behind there. And I think that when you lean in a little bit and get curious, you're gonna unlock something beautiful, and more importantly, just understand more. And I think that that's another thing too, is just understand, like, be curious, understand. And I think that just opens up a floodgate of community collaboration, and and good good environment, great environment.
Yeah. One of our adventures that I really enjoyed was when we went to Israel. And
Oh yes, that was awesome.
yeah, you and then you know, our youngest son Sam and my wife Deborah, and just the four of us. And we went with a very, very small group, fit in a little minivan, and we went everywhere. And the one thing I thought that was really interesting is that about everywhere we went, whether it was Israel or Guatemala or wherever we've been internationally, especially, the idea to really understand those cultures and those communities and respect what they bring to our kind of global family. And it's a fascinating part of, I think, good leadership, which is, you talk about curiosity, the idea of wanting to understand, the other, but also just the idea that as Americans, we sometimes go into places with a complete misconception,
Yeah.
and we have to keep ourselves very open. And I loved your point about curiosity versus judgment. What a great principle that is for leadership and for anyone in almost every circumstance. It's part of that emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence that we should be practicing and making sure that we're working with effectively. So I appreciate that context. Look,
Yeah.
let's kind of finish up a little bit with this idea of uh, adventure in learning. You are a learner. You started out as a child, just like we all did, right? And you learned to dance and became a world champion. You've learned to act and to sing and have performed on Broadway and on the West End. You have learned to do other skills, some of the other jobs that weren't your primary job, but you became curious about other people's jobs. And one day, while we were in Guatemala, you got a phone call that said, "Hey, Derek, tell us a little bit about that," and then what that, in terms of that adventure, became.
Yeah, it was funny. So we were in Guatemala, and it was like a jungle downpour rain, torrential. I think it was Tikal. We were in Tikal, and I get the phone call, and I'm like, "Hi, I work for Michael Bublé, and I'd love for you to direct this music video for one of his songs." And I'm like, "We're raining." I'm like, "Okay, what?" you know, and
Michael who?
Michael, what? Michael, he's that guy. But long story short, I ended up having an idea for the song when I heard it, and quickly sent them back an idea, concept, and within a few weeks, I shot this music video, which by the way, he never knew about. He never knew about that. He didn't even know that they asked me to do this, and I did it for free and everything, and he ended up seeing it when he was, you know, just with his son, and he like, Michael, have you seen this video? And he's like, what are you talking about? And he looked at it, and he realized, and he watched it, and it brought tears to his eyes, and we became friends ever since. But that was one of those experiences where I've never really directed something, but except for like maybe little concept videos or little things here and there. But that was a big learning experience for me, and I looked at all the different experiences of observing directors and observing camera operators or DPs, and just by observation, kind of just winging it a little bit. And then you realize, actually, I know a little bit more than I thought, and you start trusting your instincts a little bit more. And but what's really important is having that collaborative effort. You're just communicating with people, and you're realizing how important the DP is, and how talented they are, and you also empower them. You say, whatever you think, I'm gonna defer to you on this. Like, you are the expert in this area. I'm gonna defer to you for what you think. And that's also the other thing too, is being super humble but trusting your vision, trusting your ability, but also to delegate, and to also empower others to do what they do best and to do their job. And I think that was super helpful, and a way that helped me get into that directing space a lot more. And then since then, I've directed many more videos, and it's been great. It's been great. And I actually have one coming up very soon. And by the way I kind of do it now a little bit is I set the date before I even have the creative. I don't even know what I'm doing. And then it's like, this is the date, and I got to figure something out by then. But I'm very excited about this one. I do have an idea for this one, and it's going to be really good. But yeah.
That's kind of a little life hack too, isn't it? I mean, you basically, you have a project you need to do. You need to set yourself a date. This is my drop dead. I got to have it here. And it's interesting because we actually are made to work under stress. Stress is actually a real motivating opportunity to really achieve and to accomplish the thing that you want to do.
Yes.
And it's the distress that we have to get rid of, right? The distress isn't so healthy, but the stress is actually quite good. And so setting a date is a great life hack. If you just say, I'm going to write a book, and you just go, okay, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
But if you don't set a date for it, you're never going to write the book, right?
Yeah.
So
no,
you have
that was Dancing with the Stars. That was such a great learning experience, because like you're going live in front of people. There's no like, give me one more day, give me another hour. It's like, no, this is what's happening, and you're either ready or you're not. And it was stressful, but we did it, and you start to build confidence in yourself when you do those things, when you finish those tasks. And actually, I think I was reading something actually in your library there. I turned a page, and I saw something, and it basically was I think it's called Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits, yeah, by James Clear. It's a great
Yeah.
book, and anyone who hasn't read that should read that. He really breaks down habit formation in a really effective way.
Yeah, and I was just saying, like, it's those small completions, right? Making your bed, completed, did that, completed, and those small completions, they stack on top of each other, and you start to feel like better about yourself. So completing a project like on Dancing with the Stars or this video, you suddenly go, oh, okay, and you keep building on that, those completions and those habits, and it's pretty great.
So one of the things that we're going to do together a little bit is make ourselves available to have a little conversation, whether with a corporate or nonprofit or educational institutions, and talk about the idea of taking the lead, which was the title of your book, and your dad's kind of stealing it a little bit, to taking the lead, leadership lessons from the art of dance. It's really interesting because I've studied leadership and practiced it within the context of business and nonprofits. I just had this weird thing hit me one day where I said, wait a second, Derek is literally living almost every leadership principle as he is working with people in dance. And I started kind of making that list of things and kind of going, whoa, wait a second. And even in the actual movement of dance, there's
Yeah.
things. I mean, for example, starting off when you're going to say, hey, we're going to learn a dance. Well, the first thing you probably tell your partner is, well, what is the dance, right? Oh, it's a cha-cha. Well, immediately, if you know anything about dance, you kind of get that little cha-cha rhythm, you kind of get it. Most people would, say, oh, yeah, I kind of know what a cha-cha is, but at least you have a little context now to build on. But it's just one of those things where I think one of the adventures in learning is how do we make learning more sticky? That's a sticky learning is sort of the principle that science is kind of how do we get our the neurological aspects of learning into a place where it becomes sticky, where in most cases, and one of the reasons we formed LEAD in the first place is in most cases when someone tells you something, you remember about this much. If we show you how to do it, you learned about this much. If you have to teach it, you're going to learn this much, right? I mean, if you do it, if you have to teach it, it's even more. So one of the things that's great, and you talked a little bit about this in your dancing experience, when you were teaching people to dance, it was the fact that you had to do it was helping you learn how to teach. And it was sort of that on the job training a little bit. But when we have an experiential learning experience, then we really can make it stickier. So
also immersive, immersing yourself, like immersing yourself in something. So there's the idea of like, okay, if I really want to become good at something, like, if I really want to get good, and it's why people always are like, wow, Dancing with the Stars, they improve so quickly, it's incredible. I'm like, well, they are for 3 months every single day working for at least 5 hours every single day. Now name another thing that you've done that for. Very, very little. So if I say I want to become a great guitar player, you go, okay, well, I'm going to take a half-hour lesson once a week. You're like, okay, that's gonna be a long time. But if you were to say, I'm going to take 5 hours every day for 3 months, your growth is going to be exponential, right? It's going to be crazy. So not that we all have the time to do that, but my point being is that if there's something that you really, really are desiring, to not be afraid to immerse yourself into something.
If I'm reading it in a book, I'm going to remember like zip, right? I mean, very little. But if I'm doing something, it goes back to movement, right, Derek? I mean, you can't teach a dance unless someone's moving. That's they're actually doing something. There's movement associated with learning to dance, just like there's learning associated. Any kind of learning can be enhanced with movement. So it's sort of movement goes both ways. It may be specific to learning tennis or to learning basketball or to learning dance, but also movement enhances other learning as well.
Absolutely. And actually, what you just mentioned it too, association. Whatever you associate, and nothing is more powerful to make something sticky is to create an emotion to that experience. Like if you were to say, like I heard this before, but like if you were to say, where were you on August 20th, 1985 or whatever, you'd be like, I don't know. But if I say, where were you on 9/11? You know what I'm saying? Like we all know where we were because there was such a visceral emotion attached to that experience. And we all know, I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was doing. And so, even like with dance, the way I use that experience to attach association or emotion to certain things to help them remember things. A good example, actually, Joanna Krupa, we were doing a dance, a tango, and we kept getting to this part and she kept messing up and I was getting frustrated. I was like, and I kept like getting this frustrated noise, like, and I would go, let's try it again. I walk over there and we dance and she'd mess up and I go, And then when I realized, I sort of checked myself because I felt myself getting high and getting, frustrated. And I was getting frustrated because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. But then when I started to realize that when we started getting to that part, I could feel her tense up because she was expecting me to react. She was anticipating a negative reaction. She associated a negative experience to that motion. So I was like, okay, this is on me. I'm not being a good coach. I'm not being a good teacher here. This is all on me. So I flipped the script. We started doing a tango. I get to a point and she does it wrong, but I celebrate. I go, yes, that's it. You did it. And I was like, she's like, what, really? I'm like, yeah, you nailed it. I'm like high-fiving her and I'm like, we're jumping up and down. I'm like, let's do it again. We do it again. She doesn't do it right still, but I still like, that's perfect. I give her a hand, but just do that little thing. But other than that, perfect. And so I keep doing that and I keep sort of associating a positive experience to that move. And then before you know it, that's her favorite move of the whole routine. She can't wait to do that move. She can't wait to get to that section. And we get there and even if you watch it back, she hits it and the whole dance, she's doing good. And that part, she does it so good. And what I realized is that was my fault. I needed to associate a positive emotion and feeling to this moment, this move. And that's where it became sticky. So creating an emotion to, something that you're learning is so important. That's why motion equals emotion, right? So the way you move directly affects the way you feel. So it's like, how do we make something stick? Let's say something, let's learn something, but let's move our bodies while we're doing it and create an emotion to it. And I think that's a powerful thing. And that's what's so great about this about lead is that, you're learning something, but you're moving, you're on an adventure, you're taking action. You're not just like, well, it could be cool if we did it. No, you're doing it and you're learning. And so I think that experience of learning the script, if you will, the then actually do the experience and adventure of it all and combine those two, that's what creates not only a everlasting experience, but a memory and, like you said, something sticky.
Yeah, it basically, we think it then, the literature says that it becomes portable. You take it from that experience, that moment where there is motion and there's movement and there's emotion, and you're attaching it to a learning experience that's a leadership principle. And then when you go back to the office and you kind of go, oh, yeah, I totally get how that fits here, because I remember how it fit there. And I just remember how important it was. And it's going to transfer so well into what they do. You're just not going to forget the principle. You're going to remember the principle. You still have to choose to act on it, but it is, the science is behind it. The evidence is behind it. And, it's one of those things where when we started this business, the idea was, well, we've had a number of entrepreneurial successes in life. It's been a fun run on a number of business levels, but what do we want to do now, right? And I remember asking myself that question, because every individual from a personal leadership standpoint also has to gain clarity about what their purpose is, what they want to do. And one of the purposes that I had was, well, I want people to, help people to understand how to lead better. We need great leaders in this country, in this world, in business, in politics, in government, in nonprofits. We don't just need a leader, we need great leaders. We need leaders who practice many of the fundamentals we talked about just in these podcasts. And the idea here is, how do we help people, do that? And one of the ways that I thought was, first of all, I like being out of doors and I like adventure.
Yeah.
As I search the literature, it's like, wait a minute, this is like one of the best ways we can teach leadership principles. I mean, this is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, also to say what you're saying before, it's not just creating good leaders to lead other people. It's creating a leaders who lead themselves, right? It's like
exactly
to lead, because that's where it really begins, right? That's where it all starts. Is being able to
self-leadership.
self-leadership. And that's one of the hardest ways to lead, honestly, is because, I think we often say it's so easy to give advice, but to take your own advice is really hard, right? So
Oh yeah, I know.
yeah, yeah. But so I think that is a very important sort of distinction of you know having this adventure, this experience. Really, what it is it's I'm gonna gain leadership of myself. I'm going to learn to lead myself better. So that and then by a consequence is that I'm going to be able to lead others. And I think that self leadership is it's an ongoing process, it's an ongoing practice. But it's something that once you start to see improvement and start to get a hold of, because here's the thing, Dad, you were mentioning about all these different accomplishments that I've done, and achieved, and Emmy awards and trophies and world championships and whatever it might be. But the thing that I'm honestly most proud of for myself, honestly, is overcoming certain things in my life and certain habits in my life and certain things that I didn't like. I didn't like the path that I was going down, and I was able to get a bit more leadership of myself and to trust myself a bit more. And for me, that moment, I revere that more than any trophy that I could have ever won. Is 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 that moment that I was able to really like say, hey man, I'm going to take lead of my life and of myself. I'm not going to be at the mercy of my habits or of my
Environment, yeah.
decisions, environments. I'm going to create that, and I think that is something that I feel the most proud of my achievements. Of myself. And what's great about that too is that because of that transition in my life, where I did take a bit more leadership of myself, it was a knock-on effect. So many more opportunities, so many more things happened, and so many more. It just was a floodgate. And so I think that's a really important focus with all of this, is that self, understanding and curiosity and leadership to then as a consequence help and serve and lead others.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the design of the programs that we do. Is we do self leadership, group leadership, and organizational leadership, and they can kind of operate in that sequence too,
Yeah.
because you're right. It is a lot better to have done some self mastery work. And by the way, I mean, come on, let's just be really honest about it. Nobody's perfect. I mean, the fact that I like to teach leadership doesn't mean I'm the best leader in the world. The fact that I like to adventure doesn't mean I'm the most accomplished adventurer in the world. But here's the thing. One thing that we can do is we can accompany each other in discovering the things that we need to do for ourselves and for others. And so really the way we look at lead is the leadership, the experience, the adventure, the development, the growth, these things. It's not like there's no magic pill. There's no silver bullet. There's no, instantaneous results here. Everything takes hard work. Just like you said, it's hard work, and we should expect it to be hard work.
Yeah.
But I see our role in our organization as accompanying our clients, our friends, our colleagues, those who associate with us, our partners, to accompany them on that discovery. And we can, provide some of the tools to, make that discovery more clear and provide clarity. And that's really the role I think we play in this situation. Listen, before I let you go, because, you got work to do. We all do. But it's been so much fun having this conversation with my own boy. I mean, I love it. It's like we could go on for another couple hours probably, but we won't. But just in thinking about the things that we've chatted about, adventure and leadership, any sort of parting shots, any thoughts that you want to just share, or really kind of anything you'd like to just end up with, doesn't matter.
I think,
your closing thought, just sort of like,
yeah.
what does adventure mean to you?
Let me ponder on that for a moment. Adventure. I'm actually gonna quote Brene Brown. I thought
She's awesome.
pardon?
She's awesome. She's
Oh,
just ridiculously
she's phenomenal.
terrific.
She's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And I think this is a good one for adventure, because I think that, you know, to take an adventure, right? In any way, whether it be a physical adventure, an emotional adventure, a spiritual adventure,
Right.
a community adventure. I mean, there's so many different types of adventures, but you have to be daring. You have to be vulnerable, right?
Yep.
And daring, to be daring is, this, to quote her, is not saying I'm willing to risk failure. Daring is saying I know I will eventually fail, but I'm still all in. And I just thought that that's a great one, because I think that the fear of failure stops people from adventure. The
Yeah.
fear of failing stops you from taking that job, taking that interview, you know, going on the trip. The fear of failing, the fear of it, and then, by the way, the failure of it, but also the failure of the expectation of it. Like, what if it doesn't meet my expectations of what I think it should be? You know, but it's so, to be daring is to say that it's okay. I'm going to fail. I know I'm going to fail, but I'm still all in. Let's go. You know what I mean? Let's do this. And I think that is that's empowering. That's empowering, and it's gonna opportunities to take more adventures.
All right. Great. Derek, thank you so much. Appreciate the time that you've given to have this discussion on adventures in leadership. And by the way, we've got to get our next adventure plan soon.
Let's do it.
That's it for this episode of Adventures in Leadership. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on the lessons and experiences gained from taking on the adventure of life and business, and how it can inform your own leadership development. This has been a production of Lead. We are a new kind of personal, team, and organizational leadership company, dedicated to accompanying those who want evidence-based learning and education that activates development and growth to produce the results you want in life and in business. We are also dedicated to serving youth in a quest to minimize digital reliance, to provide outdoor activities, to do hard things, to serve others, and to put a little adventure in their lives. Check out our website at l-e-a-d.co to learn more about who we are and how we are serving.